Okay, welcome to the government funding panel, and a quick round of introduction. So people know me, I suppose. Let's start in the order of the program. Brad, do you want to introduce yourself?
You're on mute, Brad.
Yeah.
There we go. Sorry about that. All right. Brad Martin, currently serving as the program manager within DARPA's Information Innovation Office. I'm on loan from the National Security Agency at NSA. I've been within the research group there for nearly 2.5, 3 decades, focused on trustworthy systems, a focus on design, architecture, analysis, and implementation of systems.
Thanks. And Brad is really known to be a long-time supporter of formal methods, even during the periods where it was a dirty word.
Sometimes we change the name a little bit, but anyway, high confidence systems. So.
Okay, thank you. Next one, Paul Waller from NCSC.
Hi, yeah, I'm Paul. I'm one of the principal technical directors at the UK National Cybersecurity Centre. So our mission is to keep the UK safe online, and I'll talk a bit more about what that means later and why it's relevant to this. But my background, actually a little bit like Brad, is in trustworthy systems and trusted computing in general. I've done a lot of work with his parent organisation and other industry partners in that area over the last couple of decades.
Thank you. Next one. Sebastian Jester next to me. Please.
Hi everyone, I'm Sebastian Jester from the Cyberagentur. I'm originally an astrophysicist and have been working at the Cyberagentur since June on a formal verification as head of secure hardware and supply chains. And I'm on loan from the Federal Ministry of Education and Research, where I was latterly at the electronics unit and created a program on trustworthy electronics, amongst other things.
And finally, Tiki Taka.
Hi, guys, can you hear me? Okay, great. So, hey, I'm Tiki. I'm chief researcher at the Secure Systems Research Center in TII. We'll talk a little bit about that, what TII is. And I have been, Intel fellow, spent 21 years there at Intel, working from servers to graphics to security to mobile chipset to, phone chipset. So I have kind of a long journey, been here 4 years, doing some really exciting stuff, and we'll talk about that shortly.
Okay, thank you very much. I must say I'm really very pleased to have this panel of 4 significant government funding agencies assembled. And I'm really looking forward to your views on what are your views and priorities and vision for trustworthy systems, and in particular, formal verification in that space. So, Brad, do you want to kick off?
Sure, absolutely. Are my slides? Someone's going to display my slides, I believe. There we go.
Elliot.
All right, everyone can see the slides? Okay, great. Again, Brad Martin from DARPA's I2O. And so before stepping into sort of the first slide, I just want to mention that on an occasional basis, DARPA develops internal strategic plans, analytic frameworks is what they're called, for areas of critical and emerging interest. So previous frameworks have focused on topics such as cyber, which led to more than a decade of major programs at DARPA. Most recently, the I2O office led in the development of an analytic framework for AI, which is resulting in an acceleration of some of the strategic priorities for bringing AI to the mission here at DARPA. Most recently, and in Bill Shirless's role as a special assistant to the DARPA director, he was asked to lead the development of a framework for secure, adaptable, resilient, and capable systems, or SARC. Within the framework, the primary focus is on software, but the scope also includes computing hardware and firmware. And so within the next few slides, I'll quickly highlight some of the goals and challenges that are part of that framework, key technical ideas, and then priority areas of research described within the SARPA framework. So I guess first off, the modern cyber threat has become technologically sophisticated, nimble in engineering and execution, and strategic in scope. Our systems and cyber tools both then must consequently be engineered to increasingly higher levels of security and resilience, even as they grow in adaptability, capability, complexity, and interconnection. They must also be engineered in a way that enables highly confident evaluation with respect to this diverse array of attributes. So in response to this modern threat, the SARC framework focuses on 4 aspirational attributes of systems: secure, adaptable, resilient, and capable. Taking a deeper dive, and again, you'll see sort of probably my interest and focus sort of moving through the next couple slides, but taking a deeper dive into secure goals and challenges as an exemplar, we understand that to achieve high levels of confidence and to address the broadening attack surfaces of interconnected systems and infrastructures, current software T&E approaches, which are oftentimes based on proxies and samples, such as process indicators and black box test results. These techniques must be augmented with evaluation of evidence that directly links mission function and quality requirements with implementation artifacts. With appropriate evidence, T&E judgments could become much more rapid and predictable, with participation of T&E authorities shifting focus from that exit gate to the earliest planning stages of mission scoping, architecting, and design of tool chains and infrastructure. Actually, even a perspective that we would have at DARPA is that T&E partnering with DARPA could happen to ensure that the frameworks for evidence and evaluation are most current and present, and really sort of present a pulling function, since the T&E practice would correspondingly drive practices for systems prototyping development and sustainment evolution. For the SARC framework, 7 key technical areas are also articulated. As well, we see that the same foundations are underpinnings for both technology and practice. Building off of the earlier discussion of the evidence and T&E judgments, we understand that evidence is necessarily diverse, comprising engineering models, including domain-related models, threat models, application models, and quality-related models, as well as analyses, tests, and other supporting artifacts, all integrated and composed through suitable argumentation structures and tooling. This kind of body of evidence, including associated tool chains, provides a sound basis for effective and efficient judgments. For the SARC framework, numerous priority areas of technical research are detailed with respect to the 4 practices. On the previous slide, the what we build, how we build it, how it is sourced, and how we assess it. And again, you'll see sort of this overlap with some of the things that I've been sort of focusing on, especially that perspective of evidence-based software deliverables, integrated formal methods. I won't spend much time at all sort of on this slide, but there are many DARPA programs that informed the SARP framework, with many of them mentioned here. In the next 2 slides, I'll hone in on just a few in the slides that follow, HACMS and CASE. I'm quite sure sort of this community is strongly familiar with the HACMS program, the role of SEL4 in enforcing architectural separation within the system, and then more recently, the 2021 DEF CON achievement. One thing that as I was sort of looking at HACMS more recently, that That also was, I think, a very powerful statement to me, and it was left to us from the HACM's Red Team, and within their final report. And I want to share that here. Let me just read this. It says, HACM's technologies have made revolutionary advances in the resilience available to developers and autonomous vehicles. The final vehicles delivered under the HACM's program, even as research prototypes, proved to be resilient against most forms of attack to a degree rarely seen even in the hardened fielded systems. Of all the final formally verified components assessed under the final phase of the program, no memory corruption failures, mathematical operation faults, or security isolation compromises were identified. Really powerful statement, again, by the HACM's Red Team within their final report. But the statement really speaks to me to the power of designing for resiliency, and then that role of direct engineering evidence. The second program that I want to talk about was the CASE program. I believe you've heard just earlier this morning by Darren Kofer in regard to the CASE program. The program, just to sort of recap, it is focused on designing software for embedded military systems that is cyber resilient. And here we define cyber resiliency in terms of mission assurance, a statement that our systems can fight through a hostile cyber environment and complete the mission. We're providing this capability by designing systems that are tolerant to adverse cyber threats, cyber events, using model-based systems engineering tools and techniques. A particular note on this slide is, again, the briefcase tools that provide automated architectural design patterns to address cyber resiliency requirements, whose MBSE environment targets different OSs, including the SCL4 microkernel, whose approach is based on the coevolution of system design and assurance artifacts, so that the design changes automatically update the associated certification evidence, and which have formal methods integrated throughout the workflow, including requirements capture, component synthesis verification, code generation, and the SCL4 microkernel itself. And then finally, on the final two slides, I've highlighted a few additional DARPA I2O SCL4 related initiatives arising through SBIRS, Seedlings, and the PEARLS AIE. And again, the slides are left as a leave behind here. But with that said, maybe just a quick word on the PEARLS AIE activity, where two teams in particular are leveraging SCL4 within their activity. The PEARLS activity is seeking to leverage AI in support of searching complex spaces and pattern identification, determining appropriate facts or definitions to apply in constructing or repairing rigorous proof, and requiring novel AI methods that can be trained on available data to select paths through the body of knowledge that are consistent with the logical context and the relevant assumptions. And so that's the Provers AI, the AI exploration. And so with that, I'll go ahead and stop.
Thank you very much. So as you demonstrated, DARPA has really a long track record of supporting the SCL4 technology. And I think it's fair to say that without DARPA, in particular the HACM's program, we would not be here today. So thank you again to you and in particular your organization for the vision in supporting this technology at a very early stage. Moving on to NCSC, who is also significantly supporting the technology. So Paul, please go ahead.
Hi, I hope everyone can hear me all right.
Sure.
I introduced myself earlier, so a little bit more about NCSC for those who haven't heard of us before. The National Cybersecurity Centre is part of the UK government. So I'm a civil servant, and our mission is to keep the UK safe online, and that covers literally the whole country. So right from sort of military defence, central government stuff, all the way down through local government, and also supporting industry, supporting citizens. So we write policies and assure technologies that support the health service, support small businesses, and help deal with the kind of incidents that people suffer and help them remediate and recover. So we've got a very wide remit, and I can talk a lot about the different work we do in the different areas of that. Actually, the main interest from this technology is in what I kind of call the old-fashioned part of it, which is right at the top of the threat pyramid, if you will. So design of our systems for the highest level of resilience to protect either our most sensitive data, or increasingly, as well as the government stuff, to actually protect critical systems and our national critical infrastructure. As more and more bits of that infrastructure become connected and interdependent, it becomes more and more important to make them as resilient as possible, such that an attack can't do significant damage. So we've got the remit to design and assure those systems, and to make sure that they are appropriately resilient given the importance of what's being protected, which can just be data or can be access to operate critical systems. So this is something we've done for a great many years, many decades, and traditionally there's been a very high level of specification from the government to our industry partners who build these devices in terms of exactly what kind of hardware they use, what kind of software is permissible, and how they should interoperate. And that's worked for a very long time, been very successful. However, now we're starting to be under more pressure to provide devices and operating environments that are more similar to the commercial world and to the mass market. So, for example, huge data centers to allow access to and use of cloud technologies and AI, very high performance, very high data rates, large amounts of data going to and fro, things like video conferences like this one, but also large data and analytics and the whole bunch of information that accompanies devices and actions in the modern world. So very high performance in kind of data center stuff, so that's higher data rates, but without compromising on resilience. And then at the other end of the scale, we've got a lot more requirement for mobility, so people who need to be able to access the very sensitive information essentially from anywhere. And those devices need to be small, they need to be power efficient, they need to be portable and very easy to use, but they can't compromise on any of the resilience that we care about, because they're still protecting things that we really care about. Again, be that government information or be it access to critical infrastructure, which we use to either provide critical assets or simply run the economy. So a surprising number of things become critical if you think hard enough about it. Everyone's been in that situation where the network's failed and that thing you were trying to do suddenly becomes so important that you can't live without it. And the list of things in that category is growing, and so we're under more and more pressure to make things as resilient as possible. So what that drives us to do is to move away from kind of government specified technology and get closer to using more like commodity hardware and commodity IT. We need the performance, we need the power efficiency, we need the kind of scale that only the kind of global interconnected industry can give us. And so the question then becomes, how do I understand that technology stack enough to be able to get confident that it's resilient and such that it needs to be? And this is where technologies like formal verification come to our rescue a little bit, because we can gain sufficient confidence in significant parts of that system, such as the microkernel we're using, for example, that they will operate as intended even if they're under attack, and that even if we can't eliminate every single possible scenario, we can highly restrict the areas of our design that we're concerned about, and we can focus on those using traditional assurance methods and lab work that we have done over the decades. So this is an important part for us in gaining that understanding and gaining that confidence. The fact that we have open communities mean that we can participate in innovating while making use of work going on elsewhere, so working with partners. The US has been mentioned heavily, but this is a global effort, and that's really important to us because we can use all that gives us, and also contribute back, as Gonit has alluded to, in that we are able to be part of that community, which is again a new thing for an organisation that's previously rather used to being quite secretive, is now finding the benefits of being open and being involved in activities like this, and to highly resilient, up-to-date technologies as we go. So that's a big deal for us. I was going to talk very quickly about a couple of other things. One is the they need to be usable, and I think that's probably been touched on already, but it's not enough that it just works. It needs to be, even if it's providing the right resilience, it needs to be reasonably approachable to develop code. It needs to be accessible by a wide range of developers to reduce the cost of development, and hence a lot of our research focus, as well as on proving the utility of the technology, is about making it easy to adopt and helping people get to grips with it and use it as much as possible, and help people understand the benefits that verification can provide, and widen the applicability of it. And lastly but not leastly, as well as being usable, we need to be able to encourage innovation, and that sounds really easy to say. It's very hard to innovate when the product you're developing is going to be part of a critical national infrastructure, and the temptation to rely on something tried and tested rather than try something brand new is kind of obvious when you think about, you know, how highly reliable the final product has got to be. So it's on us, as well as our partners in this space, to help people try new things and encourage those projects. And so sort of nurturing those innovations and building new ways of protecting critical systems is part of what we're about, and working with this community and others is a big part of our work there. So I've lost track of how long I've been speaking for, but that sounds like roughly what I wanted to say. So I'll hand back over to Gunnar. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Of course, NCSC has also been supporting SCL4 for quite a few years, but very much sort of under the hood, and not too many people knew about it until they came out earlier this year. Thank you. Now over to Sebastian, who in a way is the new kid on the block.
Exactly.
Representing the youngest agency of the four we're talking to.
Yes, thank you. And since I am the new kid on the block, I wanted to spend some time on talking about my agency as well as our plans. So if we, next slide, please. I can click on, great. So you can read the name there in German. I think you can pass most of it because it's close enough to English. And if not, we have this English tagline now, Innovation for Cybersecurity. That's what we're about. We're a federal funding agency. We are outside the administration formally because we're a separate legal entity, a limited liability company, but we are mandated and funded by the Ministries of Defense and Interior. And our unique selling point in the landscape of public funders in Germany is that we fund fundamental research in cybersecurity. Our mandate is up to TRL 4. But personally, coming from funding industry-driven research, I always worry about how do you get ideas from academia into applications, because ultimately you need products if you want to use these ideas in real life. We have an interdisciplinary approach. We have a multi-annual strategic framework that kind of has some topics, and I'll show them on the next slide. And then we are pretty free to define ourselves what is the best way to approach these topics, who are the players we need to address these topics, and all of it with the goal of addressing needs of the interior and exterior security communities, so military, law enforcement in Germany. We're supposed to take a high-risk approach, and that means scientific risk, not project management risk. The figure has been given of 90% failure rates. There's a great Dilbert, which I should have put in the talk, where somebody tells the pointy hat boss that you know that only 1 out of 10 R&D projects succeed. I propose canceling the other 9. Right, and our charge going along with the focus on fundamental research is picking things up at an early stage, be that from academia or be that from startups or other ideas. So no matter where the innovation comes from, we're supposed to find it and to nurture it, and even if it takes a long time. So the horizon that we have is 5 years plus, 5 to 10 years. And because we are taxpayer funded, our goal in general is transparency. So projects results are shared within the federal government and by default with the public, unless there is a very immediate security concern that would say, no, you shouldn't make this public. And the whole thing aligns with a larger security strategy and cybersecurity strategy of the federal government. And I won't read out all the terms at the bottom, but it's part of a bigger strategy. So our thematic framework is clustered into 3 areas: secure society, secure systems, and key technologies. And I won't go through all of these, just wanted to show you that we do have, we cover a fairly wide range of things. I mean, the standard things you would expect from cybersecurity agency, like cryptography is in there. But we have a fairly wide understanding of cybersecurity. So there's also things like digital consumer protection and the secure hardware and supply chains that I'm responsible for is here in the middle in secure systems. So we are right now taking our first steps in actually funding formal verification. We just launched 5 studies on what our research priorities should be. They're running for 4 months, so until January, it's about €500,000 in funding. Gernot is participating through Hensoldt Cyber. So we've structured this into 5 areas because we want to look at the entire stack and we worry about community building. So this summit comes at a great, it's just great timing for us because we kind of share your goal of community building and of making formally verified software more widely known and more widely used. So we have hardware, DFKI in Bremen, the Artificial Intelligence Research Institute with SITE in Bremen is supporting that. We look at the ISA as the interface between hardware and software. We look at the software. And we also worry about hardware supply chains, both sort of in the technology sense. Is there a way to assure that the thing that you have on your lab desk is really what you ordered, and do you really know where all the components come from? But then beyond formal verification, I also worry about security of supply chains in the sort of dependency context. And do you know where things come from? Do you have security and resilience in the supply chain if one key component, if you can't buy that anymore? And then sort of spanning all these aspects, we have we look at how to build a community and an ecosystem. And so that brings me to the vision we have, which is really an ecosystem of verifiably secure IT. So it's, as I said, ideally the entire stack. In January, we will get the results from these preliminary studies, and then based on those results and based on all the thinking and talking I'm doing here and doing with my colleagues, define a follow-up program that is then going to be a big funding program with a call coming out middle of next year and hopefully a project start at the end of next year. And I should say we fund not through grants, but through public procurement. So we have in one way more options because we have some political but little legal limits on where the funding can go. And that comes with some other constraints than grants typically have for IP rights, for example. So our goals are really to then take the priority research that are identified there, really propel the field, grow it, and find a pathway to really formally verified core IT at all levels of the stack, grow the scientific community, and foster an ecosystem. I think, Renato, you said you need to bring together industry and academia and government, and I share that view. And the overarching goal, of course, is to promote cybersecurity and to promote technological sovereignty in the sense that you are not fully dependent on any single actor elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and that gets us to Tiki.
Hi there, I'm just trying to see if this clicker thing is going to work, but let's try and get that rolling. So hopefully I can control the slides now. You guys can hear me well?
We can hear you, but we don't see slides yet.
Okay, so
Now we do.
There you go. Okay. So in terms of the agencies, first of all, we are probably, Technology Innovation Institute is a very young agency, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But at the first time, I want to kind of thank Professor Garneau and my fellow speakers to be sharing the stage with you. And what I want to talk about here is some of the things we are doing in terms of security and resilience. So can we move to the next slide? I don't know how it's going to work here, but I'm trying. Okay. So TII is really part of the Advanced Technology Research Council of UAE and Abu Dhabi. And our responsibility is to shape research strategy across academia and industry. Prior to this agency, our universities were funded on kind of whatever the latest trend was, which could be machine learning or some other technology that we are trying to drive. And what we've done here is kind of turned that around and said, well, we're going to have a Technology Innovation Institute that's going to drive applied research. I think this is very similar to what some of my colleagues said. Applied research, which is going to end up commercially or, civilian or, or those use cases. And we have a program office, which is more like a DARPA, but it's not just DARPA, because DARPA is more program management office. We also do business development of technologies that we develop in TII. And potentially, if there is a technology that can spin out a company or something, then there is our Venture One, which is kind of the youngest part of the three-legged stool here for ATRC. And the big thing here is we are funded by the government, but we are a separate agency. So it's directly doesn't control. We have a Secretary General, and TII has a CEO, so has Aspire, and so will Venture One. Next slide, please. We work in different areas, which is no different than many countries in the world. Many sectors, healthcare to aerospace, sustainability. And there is a different number of technologies that kind of participate in, serving those sectors. And I'll go to the next slide, please. And so to address those centers, to address those technologies, we have, 10 research centers from quantum, autonomous, cryptography, advanced material, AI and digital science, directed energy, secure systems, and then, more on the renewable and sustainable energy center, biotech, and propulsion and space. We are focused here on secure system. The way this thing is working now, the centers we've been around since end of 2019, and we are, we grew from literally 16 employees in November 2019 to over 650 people now. So it's been rapidly funded, and we have, as you'll see here later, we are funding universities as well as working with the ecosystem. Next slide, please. We work, the secure systems areas are in 3 areas. Secure technologies, zero trust, secure autonomous system, which I'll talk a little bit more about, and secure mesh shield. And these 3 technologies are kind of fundamental for us to creating secure systems, which are cyber physical and autonomous systems. And if you look at in secure technologies, stacks are monolithic, they are not modular. A lot of them are kind of proprietary, and they're not scalable and resilient. And so our goal is to create, a modular stack that is built on open source, that is scalable and resilient, and we can add new things to it. And this is where SEL4 is a fundamental building block for us. And, our team is going to talk there about all the things we're doing, trying to drive virtualization with SEL4 and some of the other technologies that we're trying to make that happen. We apply that technology in mobile communication device and what we do, virtualization on the cloud. But the same technologies that we develop there, which is the OS, the hypervisor, the basically TEE, the SEL4 TEE, is used in all of the other areas as well. And so we use the same technology for everything in our, that we're doing. And in the mesh area, we're basically building a secure mesh connectivity that can operate without an infrastructure. And so what you see there is something that can be used in a communication device as well as, a drone. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Can we go to the next slide? Next slide, please. So as we look at the future and, we see a connected world, that is really connected, and it will be managed by autonomous systems. And when we talk about autonomous systems, these are cloud-based systems. Of course, they'll be distributed with fog connectivity, etc., and edge devices. And what you see here are many of the edge devices, could be drones, could be cars, it could be transportation systems, could be railways, traffic lights, everything is connected. And these systems are going to be, in 20 years or less, going to be completely managed by computer-based systems. And if you think about the vulnerabilities that are going to be there, it's going to be an exponential increase to what we see today. So how do we tackle that? And so let's go to the next slide. So what we have done here is to kind of approximate that environment. What we've done is built a swarm of drones, which is, hierarchically connected to edge drones and fog drones, and they're connected basically to a cloud-based system, which we call flight and mission operations. So you have basically the flight and mission operations drive the mission plan, over the air provisioning, mission updates, etc., to the swarm of drones. And in the return, you get telemetry and you get mission data back from the system. And then you're applying analysis, you're doing machine learning, both at the edge level as well as the cloud level. And what we've done here is we've started looking at building our own pieces of flight controller to make sure that the whole stack is secure. Go to the next slide, please. So what you see here is the same system, and what you see in the dark purple areas or blue areas is some of the issues that you're going to find in terms of communication, instead of, in terms of capabilities. Like most TX4 controllers today, the autopilot system, which is open source, don't have any kind of memory management, for example. And no memory protection, no isolation of memory space. These are no secure boot either. And so these are huge vulnerabilities, and those vulnerabilities exist all over the place. Let's go to the next slide. So what we've done, and we now have operational the full system that you see there, that includes the secure drone flight controller stack, mission computer stack. We're also basing all of our hardware stack on RISC-V, and we're working with the RISC-V ecosystem as well. And then also the cloud operation, flight and mission operation that can be online or offline. So for example, if you're in the field and you want to run a set of drones, you can be disconnected and the field can run the same cloud functionality out of, let's say, a bus, for example, which we are using for our own testing. And there's, of course, mesh connectivity is secure and fully pen tested. So this is kind of the goal we're kind of trying to drive. Let's go to the next slide. So there are several different areas that we worked on here. And what you see in here is the mission computer stack and the software stack. You know, we designed it, you know, it's modular, it's compartmentalized with virtual machines. So for example, you try to get in through communication stack into security on the mission computer, you can't. And we've demonstrated this, and we're trying to harden this. And, you know, as every quarter goes, we're increasing the capabilities. We've also built our own flight controller, which is based currently on the microchip PolarFire SoC, which allows us scalability and develop software for the future and some of the capabilities that we want to build for the future. It's not 100%, you know, got the security features we like, but it's still there, and we are able to use that as many capabilities as possible, again, kind of driving to an open system. Then we have basically the cloud control-based system that is got a, you know, manages this, you know, the swarm, does the provisioning, updates, does the full secure ML pipeline, and protects the data in transit. And then finally, we're building our own chip as well, working with research institutions, you know, globally to build this chip to basically replace the PolarFire someday, to basically have all the latest, greatest capabilities that, you know, we're working with the RISC Foundation to put in the RISC-V chip. So basically taped out silicon test chip this year. It's going to be coming in the next month or two. And then finally, we're going to get the new version the full version taped out in 2023. Let's go to the next slide. Again, as you can see, we have 17 universities that we're working with. We'll probably get to about 20. Of course, you know, Professor Garneau and University of New South Wales is a key partner for us in working on SEL4. And again, we with almost every university, we have open source agreements. Let's go to the next one. So again, without the ecosystem, and if you want to build zero trust system from ground up, you cannot do that without the ecosystem support. And so we're working with the Secure Autonomous Systems and with the Drone Code Organization, Autopilot, the Mavlink robot operating system. We have put our own people kind of working with the community there, driving the plumbing needed for security features. Same thing in RISC-V, the Batman protocol, and as you can see, SEL4 on the secure technology side, as well as Linux, NUDX, and the confidential computing consortium. So we are all members of this. We're driving this work, and you know, again, most of you see what we do with the open system is, you know, given back to the open system because we believe in the ecosystem being the right one. Okay, let's go to the next one. I think this is the end. So thank you very much. And, you know, you can go to our website and learn more about it. And thanks for the opportunity here.
Okay, thank you. My name has come up a few times, so I should actually do the proper thing and declare conflicts of interest, and they sort of affect all four. So as in my function as UNSW professor, I am a subcontractor to the DARPA CASE program. I'm getting funding from NCSC, I'm getting funding from TII, and through my affiliation with Hensoldt Cyber, I'm involved in these studies, as Sebastian already said.
It's not a conflict, it's an alignment of interest, right?
But that sort of is a good sedge into my question here, which is, well, these are national organizations which obviously they're funded by their national taxpayers for working for the national benefit. We are, of course, all addressing a global challenge that's very international. We have here a community that's very international. Can each of you please sort of in a concise 3-minute, no more summary, tell us what is their attitude towards funding these kind of open international activities. Some answers have already been given, so you may be able to be particularly brief, but please, Brad.
Sure. So there's definitely interest. Personally, there's a strong interest in those types of things. Currently, as an exemplar, working with folks from the TCCOE to help provide some sustaining support there. Obviously, predecessor of mine, Ray Richards, strongly involved sort of in the collaboration that DARPA has with TCCOE, as well as sort of many within the SEL4 community. And so definitely a strong interest of ours. As I think was mentioned, sometimes again there's sort of some work to get through the business sort of side of things to make and put those things into practice. But definitely sort of we have a mindset sort of for for partnering. Again, to me it was exciting not only to hear sort of from NCSE, who I know quite well, and we've had sort of a long relationship with, but also from again these other partners, Sebastian and Tiki, and hearing about sort of their activities and interests. So definitely a strong interest sort of within DARPA to move sort of into these spaces collaboratively.
Thank you. Paul?
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I think that we will always have problems to work on that are in the kind of national space, but it's pretty clear to anyone that knows anything about how hardware and software is developed that this isn't a kind of one nation working alone problem space. We're going to have to use the skills and mix of expertise around the variety of players involved in industry, academia, and in government organizations to solve some of these problems. So there's definitely an increased shift on collaboration and collaboration internationally. All the supply chains are global, and our internal market isn't big enough to support really significant innovations in hardware. We have got to get on board with wider projects, and so that's one of the reasons why we're interested in this project as well as others. There will always be things that we want to work on internally, but it's a small piece of the puzzle, and that's only going to work if we're also part of the community addressing the interconnected parts of these problems, including this one. So,
and of course, NCS is actually a member of the SEL4 Foundation.
Yes, and we've done significant work in other standards organizations in the past as well. It's not a hugely new thing for us. Again, there's the solutions to these problems are around the world, and the openness and the formal verification actually makes it easier for us to incorporate solutions from other projects and to gain the level of confidence that we need in their resilience. And so that's a big part of this for us.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. Of course, that can't be made often enough. I keep saying, once you have a proof, it doesn't matter whether your device or your code comes from North Korea or from the Red Cross. Sebastian.
Yes. So again, alignment of interests between us and what Brad and Paul just said. I mean, of course, my task in a way is to grow a strong ecosystem in Germany. But if the path to that ecosystem is funding, the path to that ecosystem is clearly funding the best work that is being done. And if that work is done in Australia, not somewhere else, then I think funding work done in Australia is the best way forward.
That's very pleased to hear that. And Tiki.
Yeah, I would say that I think my words kind of already said enough about supporting the ecosystem. Like what Paul said, if you want to protect your supply chain, if you don't have something like zero trust-based system where everybody's going to play the game about authentication and making sure that every component connected on that circuit board is authenticated, I don't see how you could build, the massive systems that we are talking about without the ecosystem support.
Okay, thank you all. At this time, I'd like to open it for question from the audience here. Or online, yeah, well, that includes the audience. Any questions?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, it's Jason Fox, Criterion. How do we get hold of you guys? Do we have to go through the foundation, or is there just a simpler way to try and find projects out of this community that could be presented collaboratively or through the foundation? What is actually the simplest way for companies in this ecosystem to work with the foundation and actually to approach you together, so you know the kinds of projects that are potentially bubbling around in this community?
That's a very good question. Does any of the panelists would like to address it?
Well, I mean, you already have my card, right? And we we make public calls for tender. And we try to remember to send emails and alert everybody who we've talked to that the calls are out. So yeah, and kind of I have an open door, open virtual door, in the sense that if you have something, this goes for everyone that you think is worth pursuing, but you don't have the funding and you think it ties in to this ecosystem, then just email me and tell me what your needs are and how that would benefit or how that would promote the goals that we have.
Yeah, I think we've seen a number of presentations in the last few days on specific projects that could really have the potential to lead to wider collaboration. And obviously, having this summit here with most attendees being here personally is really meant to help foster these collaborations and get people talking. Any comments from any of the other panelists?
I guess, again, from the DARPA side, very open to, conversations with individuals who, just want to, again, chat about sort of maybe a technology area that could have impact. And so I think my contact information is available through this, the SEL4 Summit, but again, open to sort of having that made available. But also, DARPA has, days where sort of, new programs are highlighted, proposer days, and so that's a great opportunity as well to learn about sort of the programs that are coming out, where organization could actually propose sort of work sort of to be applied against that program. So all sorts of things like that. There's open BAAs also at DARPA, and so you can always sort of reply sort of to an open BAA and put forward sort of an idea, which might be picked up in regard to sort of maybe a seedling activity, or might be, appropriate for an AIE or a SBIR or something like that. So lots of different sort of vehicles within DARPA to make that connection.
I would just like to echo my colleagues and mention that, first, you have some of the people from my team there, so they are in person, they are, there's like minds, you're working on the similar things. We're all open ears, happy to collaborate, and encourage you to reach out.
Yeah, I would echo that. Similarly, our engagement is to attend these events and support them, and to learn what's out there. We don't have a huge bucket of funding, I'm afraid to say, in terms of we're always open to discussing new ideas. We don't have a huge amount to allocate to new projects that kind of come out of the blue like that. Actually, we work in the UK with some of our government research councils and various academic institutions. Have a look at VETS for our academic research institute into verified trustworthy software systems. for a lot of the work we've done with academia on that, and that's our sort of vehicle for engaging in these kinds of projects. But certainly an area we are actively interested in and looking to apply to solve some of our problems. So we'll keep engaged.
Okay, thank you. I think there's a question.
Yeah, I have a question about, I guess, when you start a program or you start funding a project that involves formal verification or formal methods, sometimes it takes a long time for like a big result or a groundbreaking result, and often incremental progress is just like maybe a small step in some direction. Do any of you have any, I guess, thoughts or commentary on ways in which it would be better to demonstrate value or demonstrate results of these projects?
I'll have a go at that. I think this is really hard, and it's certainly something we care about a lot for internal research in a world where people want annual or quarterly reports on how you're getting on and benefit statements. I think there's a lot of value in kind of being able to tell the story of how the work fits into a wider outcome and what the lofty goal is and how it helps you get on the way there. But I think that's something the technical community as a whole can be better at, sort of explaining why a particular achievement or breakthrough or milestone is a really significant step on the path to where we all want to get. I wholly agree it's not easy, but having a goal that we can communicate around, resilient products or confidence in supply chains or whatever is the bit that we have as a lever, and then being able to explain why a result that you have helps pave the way, even if we're not there yet. But this is certainly not a problem unique to this field.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yeah, I think, at DARPA, again, relatively sort of newer to DARPA, but, what I've seen here is, the programs will sort of be shaped, oftentimes where, the work will be sort of foundational and funded in that way. And so the expectations, might be different as well. Within the PEARLS AIE that I sort of highlighted at the end of the activity, a lot of that work is foundational and, again, pushing sort of on, new ideas, related to proof maintenance and proof repair. I'll have hopefully a program coming out soon, which is, strongly focused on areas of proof engineering, and with the view sort of having impact, but sort of again, potentially sort of a longer horizon, sort of to have sort of the impact sort of, ultimately that I'm after, which is, about impacting, the T&E sort of within, large, US DoD sort of programs, having a sort of a shift left there in regard to sort of the T&E, making sort of a way sort of for, continuous reasoning, continuous T&E and authority to operate. So I think, DARPA, and I'm sure sort of with other groups, there's work that is really seen as fundamental. And again, there's a longer sort of, tail there that we'll be building upon. But also there'll be other activities which have sort of near term horizons and expectations along those lines.
I should say, I mean, when we put out some of the programs we've done, we've structured into short phases where you actually have a checkpoint and you have some competition with 3 teams or 3 bidders doing work in parallel, and then the best to continue to the next phase. Others, we do maybe a 3-year monolithic thing or a 5-year monolithic thing, and you're very welcome in your proposals to propose. I mean, how do you convince yourself that you're still on the right path, right? So it's a good question, but you're very welcome to contribute to answering it for us and for yourselves.
Okay, I think that's an excellent answer. Do you have any other questions from the audience? Maybe from someone else than Crichton people?
Ich hätte eine Frage für die audience. Yeah. So if I may put a question to the audience, I was wondering, since, I mean, we also have, the funders together, and I think I'll definitely get in touch and see how we can coordinate without being dogmatic about anything. But I was wondering whether, this whole, we've I've heard talks we've heard talks about several different directions and focusing, from everything from the drivers to the OS to using languages like Rust or Erlang. And I was wondering if there needs to be sort of a broader effort to create a community roadmap that says this, as a community, is how we see the way to success, world domination. And so in the semiconductor world, for the Moore track, it sort of works like that. You have, everybody faces the same fundamental problems of how to get to a smaller node, right? So you meet, you write down all the hard questions that you need to answer, you work on them in parallel, and then 6 months later you get together again and you say, okay, this works, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, let's continue this way. And then you all go in the same direction, but with a division of labor. And it's sort of a long-term program. It's coordinated, but it keeps the competition of ideas going. Is that a model that this community needs, or that would be useful for this community? Or, I mean, because this is something we would be happy to help structure if it helps.
I think this is an excellent point. And sort of my foundation chair view is this is exactly what we want. I think we are sort of getting to the stage where we can seriously look at that. I think the community had to mature a bit to reach that stage where we can really develop a roadmap like that. But what I've seen over the last 2 days was actually extremely encouraging in this respect. There's a lot of stuff that's getting fairly solid, and we can really start thinking about, can we sort of come up with directions that give people guidance. So I think this is something that actually the technical steering committee should take on. That's probably one of the core reasons for having this. Maybe Gavin could comment on this.
I don't think that's the technical steering committee. No, I mean, it needs to be a community effort, right? And the technical steering committee can't go and like from 3 companies decide where the entire community has to go. But we could certainly help organize it or something like that. I personally think it's still a bit early. There are multiple things developing that are at a very early stage. Like, for instance, Erlang support, that seems to be like at a product phase already. Rust support is kind of, there is a commercial-ish project out there, but from the foundation side, I think there are a few fundamental steps first that we should figure out to even have like a base Rust support that multiple efforts can spring out of. So I'm not entirely convinced that we're at that stage yet, but it's certainly something that we should keep an eye on. And I think it would make sense if the bigger players in the community that are interested in that come together and talk, basically. And then, yeah, we could see if there's interest for that and how it should be coordinated.
I just wanted to add as well that there is a fine balance between welcoming and fostering the innovation from the entire community and being prescriptive about where we think it's going to be. Like and we are not, the foundation is not hiring anyone. So it's great to see all the different effort that comes out of the things, and we can give guidance that comes both from what I think Gerwin was just mentioning about the interest. So learning about where people want more effort to be put in because they would really like to see this coming. And on the other hand, from maybe the TSC to say, yeah, that makes sense from the principles or from, that will constitute something that is good in the greater picture. And that maybe is what we can think of as a roadmap, but it's not something where we can say, we would like in 5 years for this to happen, because that depends on what the companies will be building and things like that. So I think I just wanted to add on that fine balance. And Raf wants to add something.
Well, not exactly add, but I want to turn the arrow around a little bit, because working with DARPA, CASE program, things like that, You notice also working with NCSC, we are designing a bunch of things here. You saw device frameworks and systems design and so forth. But when you work with these organizations, you notice that the products that this is being applied to, what SEL4 is being applied to, you don't know what it is. They can't tell you. And so a lot of this design is happening in a space where we don't actually know what it's going to be used for. And then you go to a DARPA program, and the DARPA program says, well, okay, everybody who is not ITAR enabled, you get the simple example version, and then we'll go and use SEL4 on the real thing. We don't know what the real thing is. How can we write a proposal or give you good designs that will match what you want when we don't know what you're going to use it for? So is there any way of exfiltrating that information out back to us without violating the specific information of we're going to use it on a helicopter or some, of a specific kind, but to give the gist, the shape of what it needs to be, so that we can actually apply to your programs and give you something useful?
I think that's a fair comment, and it's something we've been trying to get better at over the last however many years. I mean, it used to be the case that our entire program was classified and you couldn't participate unless you had a clearance, which would make an engagement like this a little bit complicated, or even impossible, so maybe we wouldn't even try, and we know that doesn't work. And it is getting easier. We're finding firstly, we're finding ways of sharing and of opening up some of the information that's necessary, and also we're doing more and more of our innovation in the open anyway, as we realise collaboration is essential. So there is a little more for that. There will always be a few of these things where it's not appropriate to talk about exactly where the thing is ending up or exactly what the project we are doing is. But I think it's on us to make sure our requirements are clear enough that can be used. And one of the things I said right at the beginning is that for this to be a global thing, we can't be the only customer for stuff. So we're going to have to open it up and make sure that products or platforms that are deployable in things like critical national infrastructure, which should be a more global market. And I think that will make it easier for us to be more open about how these things work. But I think it's a journey we're all on from, as I say, a few years ago when we used to supply and advise sort of almost purely military customers, and the instructions to not talk about anything ever were pretty very clear. Now to a point where we know we're not going to get the innovation we need unless we're as open as we can be with people we work with. So I think you will see more, but bear with us a little bit. It's there are things we genuinely can't share, and there are things which people need to be helped to understand that they can.
I guess
I'll just maybe add on to that. I've seen sort of with some of the programs that I have where the arm's length distance, per se, sort of between maybe it's academic groups or other performers, and maybe sort of the mission focused sort of use case within the program, in some sense can also hamper the program itself. And so in one instance recently, I was sort of seeing that within the program, and so really pushed hard to put forward a more compelling sort of open use case, which is again relevant to national security sort of mission customers, but also sort of open, and so allows sort of for some of that, again, that transparency that we would all desire to see. And so within a program that again will be coming out soon, sort of around proof engineering, there will be sensitive use cases, but there will also be open use cases, and actually proposers will be asked actually to bring sort of their use cases as well to the table for consideration. And so trying to sort of, again, as Paul said, sort of, trying to sort of move sort of forward in that perspective, understanding again that oftentimes, again, that arm's length distance, can really sort of, hamper sort of, a program and capability developments. And so, but wanting to do that in an equitable way, sort of both sort of for the government and sort of for its performer communities.
Okay, thank you. One final question.
There was going to be another answer to Sebastian's question, but feel free to cut me off if we're out of time. Thinking about roadmaps, and I guess a lot of what we talk about today and all of these talks is like research and very forward-looking about what the research can do in the future, or what the research will enable us to do in the future. But maybe having a reference platform or a killer app, killer product that is what's possible today on the tooling and the technology, and then we actually have that is maybe owned by the foundation, or like the foundation is responsible for, but then that is what's roadmapped, and that is what, the same way that Moore's law applies to transistors, and the transistor is a product where you're trying to reduce its node size each time. It sort of is like, what can we do now if we don't do any research and just focus on what we can build with the tools that we already have, and then progress that over time?
Okay, yeah. I think I hear the message, and it's not a surprising one. It's one I believed in for quite a while, that part of the job of the foundation has to be to provide leadership and guidance. And that's not in being prescriptive, but in providing some horizon to aim for. So we're out of time. I'm actually very optimistic or very pleased about what I heard from our panelists in terms of sort of openness, etc. I mean, some of them we knew that was the case already, but others it wasn't clear. So I will definitely thank you all for participating, but also really for supporting the spirit of openness and collaboration. I think this is really what we want to hear here. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.